Okay, hi everyone. Doing just a quick little lecture here on operant conditioning. So that you should have already watched a video on classical conditioning. Now we're going to talk about operant conditioning. And the basic components of operant conditioning, in general, what that means is we're talking about behavior being changed by consequences of the behavior. Okay, so uh, we're going to have the basic components are what's called an operant, or some kind of response that an organism gives, either a person or an animal. There's going to be some kind of positive or negative reinforcer um, that is going to affect that behavior, make it more likely or less likely. Okay, and so I'm going to go through some of these things. Excuse me if my voice is a little scratchy. These are important ideas in terms of the exam, but part of operant conditioning, what we talk about is reinforcement of behavior. If you are reinforcing a behavior, either positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, you're always making the frequency of the behavior go up. So I know it can sound strange that if you negatively reinforce something, you're making it more likely, but we'll talk about it. So here you can see an example of what's called positive reinforcement. You put the behavior is you put your coins into a vending machine. The consequence is you get a cold Diet Coke, and then so that is um, increasing the likelihood that you'll do that behavior in the future. Positive reinforcement is adding something positive following a behavior, and that makes it more likely. Okay, negative reinforcement is kind of a tricky thing to think about, but if you're negatively reinforcing a behavior, it means you're taking away something bad. Okay, so the example here is that you have a woman on a date, and the date's really boring, and so she says, "Oh, I have a headache," and so the date ends early. That's the consequence. So that will increase the likelihood of that person using that excuse in the future. In this case, the behavior resulted in something unpleasant, the boring date, being taken away. Another classic example of this is when you hit your snooze button in the morning. Okay, so you wake up and it's beeping at you. When you hit snooze, the annoying sound is taken away, and then if you're like me, it increases that behavior in the future. You end up hitting the snooze button more often. But in both cases, the frequency of behavior goes up. Okay. Um, if you are trying to do operant conditioning with somebody, I use this with my kids all the time. One of the things you can do is called shaping. So let's say that you want your child to poke their food with their fork and eat it and not get it everywhere. Well, they're not going to know how to do that right away. So what you start with is, okay, let me see you just hold your fork. And if they can do that, then you reinforce it. You give them some kind of positive reinforcer like a chip or a little bite of ice cream or something, and that will increase their willingness to hold the thing. And then you'll say, okay, now I want to see you touch your food with the fork. And so you get them to touch it, and you start to reinforce that the same way. And you reinforce closer and closer approximations to the desired behavior. Okay, so that's something that you can use. Uh, there are what's called primary reinforcers and secondary reinforcers. Primary reinforcers are things that are inherently valuable to people or organisms, things like food and water. Okay, these are very reinforcing because we absolutely have to have them. Secondary reinforcers are things that don't really seem important until we give them meaning. The classic example of a secondary reinforcer is money. Okay, it's really just pieces of paper, but a lot of us do a lot of different things to try and get it. So that's a secondary reinforcer. Um, I'm not going to go into it now, but you're going to want to know about these schedules of reinforcement. There should be some good parts in your chapter about that. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit about punishment. This kind of relates to um, operant conditioning. So we've talked about reinforcement where we're trying to increase behavior. Um, what if you want to decrease behavior? Well, one of the things people sometimes use is punishment, and this reduces the frequency of a behavior. Your book talks about two kinds of I'm sorry, your book talks about the difference between negative reinforcement and punishment. Remember, negative reinforcement always strengthens the behavior, reinforces it, and makes it more likely. Punishment is supposed to weaken behavior. And punishment would be things like if somebody doesn't do something you like, you hit them, or you put them in prison for a very long time. These are things that are called punishment. And there are some drawbacks to this. One of the main ones is that when you punish a behavior, you don't erase it. It's not like the person forgets what the behavior is. Um, it can have unwanted side effects. For example, if you have a child who does something wrong and you hit them, then they may be scared of the parent. That's a side effect of that um, action. And often punishment is rather ineffective unless it's given immediately after an undesirable behavior occurs, and it happens each and every time the behavior occurs. This is where a lot of parents struggle. I'm a big believer in timeout for my kids. Well, if I give my kid a timeout one time and then the next time he does the same thing, he doesn't get timeout, he's not going to learn that that's a bad thing. And also, if he does something that I don't like and I think he needs a timeout, but I don't put him in timeout until 6 hours later, he's not going to learn that he's in timeout for the thing that happened 6 hours before. And then down here, this is a really good point. When someone is being punished, it lets them know what they're doing is wrong, but it doesn't teach them what to do instead. And so I think punishment is not all that effective. And some things that work better is rather than punish a person for what they're doing wrong, is you start to reinforce them for the behavior that you would like to see. So if my son is not eating dinner, well, hitting him and tossing him in his room just it lets him know that I don't appreciate what he's doing. Not that I do that, of course. But what would probably be more effective is anytime he does anything close to eating his food, if I really praise and reinforce that, would probably be a more effective strategy. Okay, so I think there are at least one YouTube link to operant conditioning that I want you to watch in the discussion. And I think that's it. Thank you.